Hello everybody and welcome back to Typical City. That bang average side currently sitting in the middle of the Premier League table in 10th. Chelsea are rocking up to the Etihad to take on Manchester City this Saturday, 5:30 kickoff in the UK. Come and join me for the watch along. It's going to be a feisty one. Will it be as feisty as the 4-4 game at Stamford Bridge? Because what a game that was. And a spectacle for the archives. Going over the next few years, we're going to see that game played on multiple highlight reels as a real advert for the Premier League, because it was an amazing game, in particular for the neutral. A really frustrating game for Manchester City fans, but I think Chelsea fans came away a lot happier than we did because of where they are right now. They're a bang average football club, Chelsea. Bang average. In terms of their output, just totally inconsistent, unreliable, just flaky. I just totally don't believe in the next thing they're going to do. You have no idea, and that unpredictability can actually work against them. But in terms of inconsistency, they have won their last two games, which got Chelsea fans a little bit giddy, in my opinion, because it was Crystal Palace, a relegation-threatened Crystal Palace, and an Aston Villa side in the FA Cup. There was a good performance, in fairness to Chelsea, against Aston Villa. But Aston Villa were well below their usual standards, and they're on the decline right now, currently struggling for form. But the fact that Chelsea are so inconsistent this season, with 10 wins, 10 losses and 4 draws, slaps them right bang in the middle of the table. That football club is a sham right now. It's an absolute joke. The way it's ran is appalling. It really is. I mean, the silver lining for Chelsea fans is, at least they've not tied down and locked all these distinctly average football players on 7-year contracts and 8-year contracts and ridiculous wages. At least they've not done that. Oh, well, they have. They have done that because they're a joke. They're an absolute sham, Chelsea. And you just know that they're going to rock up, and these distinctly average football players, with a couple that might have a point to prove in Raheem Sterling and Cole Palmer, they're going to turn up and they're going to up their game to go against the champions of everything. The champions of England, Europe, the world. That's what they're going up against. And you know they're going to have a point to prove. So it is going to be a difficult game for Manchester City, regardless of the fact that they are so flaky and so inconsistent. I don't think it really matters going against this Chelsea side, even though they've got a few little injuries at the back as well, which I'll get onto shortly. But one thing I do have for you is a predicted game plan. I am convinced I know what Chelsea are going to do against Manchester City, because they employed a very similar tactic in the 4-4 game. I mean, it didn't stop us, did it, really? Let's think about it. It stopped us from winning the game. That's what it did do. But it didn't stop us from scoring 4 goals on their own ground, on their own turf. We went in their back garden and banged 4 in. Yes, we let in 4 goals, very sloppy, from mistakes of our own as well. That was what was really frustrating from that game, is we gifted them their goals and we had to earn ours. I felt like we really had to work hard for our goals, whereas we handed them their goals on a silver plate, and we can't afford to do that at the Etihad this Saturday. But there is a question marks over where their focus is going to lie, because, I mean, they're done, and they're almost done in the Premier League. They've got a little glimmer of hope for European football. European football with 2 points behind Newcastle, who are in 7th. That'll get them into the European spots. Is that what they want, though? I think they'd be better off not getting into Europe and starting afresh next season, and not having European football as a distraction next season, in truth. And they've also got a Carabao Cup final that's round the corner, 25th of February, if my memory serves me right, against Liverpool. So will they have a focus on that? You know, that's a piece of silverware up for grabs. And the idea of Chelsea coming away at the end of this season with a piece of silverware is ridiculous, because they do not deserve a piece of silverware at all. The football that they've played, bang average, and they've been getting turned over, convincingly turned over, by the likes of Wolves a couple of weeks ago, beating them 4-2. Liverpool wiped the floor with them 4-1. They don't threaten me at all in the long run, but they do threaten me on their day. And that's what concerns me, because they played out of their skin against us at Stamford Bridge. And I think it was echoed into the celebrations of where the two teams' current standards are at right now, with Chelsea celebrating that 4-4 result and City coming away gutted. I was gutted. Most City fans, the players, were devastated on the pitch to be drawing that game 4-4, gifting Cole Palmer a penalty in the 90-plus minute, whatever it was. Unbelievable result. It really was. But the pressure is going to be on Manchester City, with Liverpool playing at 12:30 against Brentford. That's a big game with it being 12:30 as well. Liverpool and Klopp, he hates them. He hates 12 o'clock kickoffs or 12:30 kickoffs. He hates them. We found out against Everton last week that they are hard to get your gears going. They're hard to get the pistons firing in your engine. I don't know why, to be honest. Game plans, management before, like your disrupted game plans, your pre-match rituals are all disrupted because it's 12:30 and not 3 o'clock. I can understand that to an extent, but do you know what I mean? The standards always seem to drop for 12:30 kickoffs, and that's very much in Brentford's favour going into that Liverpool game. But I do think that Liverpool will beat Brentford, which will put them 5 points clear of Manchester City at the top of the table, albeit City would have 2 games in hand after that game. So still very much in Manchester City's hands to win this Premier League. Arsenal play at 3 o'clock against Burnley away, which Burnley, they did all right in the first half at Anfield last week. It's going to be they're at home, of course, so they might pose a bit of a threat to Arsenal. I still believe that we're going to be going into this game in 3rd place, though. So that's going to ramp up the pressure, massively so. But the idea of Liverpool and Arsenal playing against Brentford and Burnley, 2 teams that they absolutely should be winning. You drop points against either of those 2 teams, then you can forget calling yourself Premier League title contenders, because that's not good enough. You have to be going away to Burnley and Brentford in this stage of the season and winning. Absolutely. Whereas that statement, if they go and do that, and I believe they will, if they go and do that, then it's over to you. Let's all eyes focused on Manchester City, and that will be a huge statement for City to win in a Premier League weekend that's very much set up for Liverpool and Arsenal to have good weekends and Manchester City to not have good weekends, because it is Chelsea, albeit they are 10th. You know what they can do on their day. And that factor being embedded into this weekend's set of fixtures is going to very much hand over the impetus to Liverpool and Arsenal. And if we win, regardless of whether they win, draw or lose Liverpool or Arsenal, that will be a real deflated moment for Liverpool and Arsenal, because I know they'll be looking at that thinking there is a little glimmer of hope that Chelsea can nick something at the Etihad. They can, because they've won their previous 2 games. Like I said, they lost the previous 2 before that, but still, you know what Chelsea can do on their day. As for Manchester City, though, we've won 11 in a row. I mean, I'm focusing on Liverpool and Arsenal. You've heard me talk about them a few times in this, but you know they don't. In the squad, in the dressing room, in the training camp, you don't hear the words of Liverpool and Arsenal uttered out of the mouths of any Manchester City player. They're all just focused on their own game, and you know full well they look at us. They always talk about us. We've heard so many interviews this season from staff and players coming out of the Arsenal camp and the Liverpool camp talking about the standards now need to be high, and Manchester City have set the standard. Manchester City this, Manchester City that. We don't talk about them. I do, as fans, we do, but the club and the players and the staff of Manchester City do not focus on them. And that's why we've won 11 games in a row, because we don't think about other teams. We think about the next game and then the next game and then the next game. When that bridge is there to be crossed, we cross it. Absolutely. So can we make it 12 games in a row against Chelsea? It will be a really difficult game. We've got 3 games in a row coming up, and we haven't lost at the Etihad in 22 Premier League games, which is ridiculous. And we've won 6 out of the last 8 home games against Chelsea. So form is very much in our favour with regards to results. But one thing that's concerning me is our clean sheets right now, because we've conceded a goal in 11 of our last 13 Premier League games, which isn't good enough. That is not title-winning form. Certainly not in the defensive department, because the majority of title-winning sides tend to have a solid defence. You look back at last season, our defence was so solid it won us a treble. But we've shifted focus a little bit. We've shifted focus in creating goals in different ways, how to adapt our play to incorporate Erling Haaland. That's the focus, and the build-up play has very much shown different signs and different elements of and patterns and networks of passes are being built up in a slightly, very subtle nuances are different in the way that Manchester City are building up play. And Chelsea nullified us at Stamford Bridge with one player in particular, and I'm going to get onto their game plan now. In fact, right now I'm going to get onto their game plan with my predicted starting 11 for Chelsea and Manchester City. Actually, no, before I do that, I want to give you the team news. That's what I want to do because there is a few players missing. Let's start with Manchester City. Gvardiol is out for 2 to 3 weeks, which is a big blow. It's bad for Gvardiol and Manchester City in the fact that Gvardiol is obviously a quality player. A very up-and-coming, promising player that I'm excited about the future. He hasn't had the greatest season so far, but far from a bad one. Not bad at all from Gvardiol. I think next season we'll see the best of him. The issue for me is that's now going to put a big strain on Nathan Ake, who's now got to play a lot of minutes in this next 2 or 3 weeks where we've got 5 games before we even play our next Champions League second leg against Copenhagen with a Manchester derby thrown in there, obviously this Chelsea game. So Nathan Ake is going to be put through his paces. And that's not ideal because he does tend to pick up a little injury. He needs to play one game here, one game there. Playing him in, week out with midweek games included. And we've got lots of Tuesday games coming up right now as well. Not ideal. Grealish is expected to be out, of course, with his groin injury that he picked up against Copenhagen in the first 15 minutes of that game. Not sure. We haven't actually had that confirmed yet, but he is expected to be out. Kovacic and Bernardo Silva, who picked up a knock against Copenhagen, is facing a late fitness test, and Sergio Gomez is away for an unspecified reason. No clarification as to why, but the rumours are that he's on his way out of the club, had his head turned, transfer, whatever it may be, which is a blow because Sergio Gomez is another player that could play on that left side. I personally wouldn't have him anywhere near a starting 11 team. Not in the Premier League, at least, Sergio Gomez. But you never know. The Luton game in the FA Cup could be ideal to play a Sergio Gomez. Without Gvardiol, we might have to play Nathan Ake, which is a blow. Team news for Chelsea. Thiago Silva came off against Crystal Palace, and so did Gusto. Thiago Silva is supposed to be out for this game, though. That's a massive blow for Chelsea. Someone who's an absolute rock in their defence. Not so much as he was in previous seasons. This season, he's not been that good, but he's still someone a lot more reliable than the rest of their starting 11. Gusto also went off, but he should be okay playing at right back for Chelsea. Wesley Fofana, Mark Cucurella and Reece James are all out. Robert Sanchez could return in goal after Petrovic played in goal for Chelsea against Crystal Palace. Conceded it looked like a worldie from Jefferson Lerma. That goal was a nice finish, but it was a little bit central. I thought he could have done better with that. He could have outstretched his hand a little bit further. It felt like he could have saved that one. And if that's the case, that he's not the greatest shot stopper and he's in goal, and Robert Sanchez doesn't make the starting 11 for Chelsea, then let's have some shots. Let's test him out. Because he's a 24-year-old goalkeeper, Petrovic, from Serbia, that I think can be tested and maybe have a few frailties in his game. Let's have a look. But in terms of Manchester City's predicted starting 11 versus Chelsea's predicted starting 11, let's get into that now, as well as the game plan as well for Chelsea that I'm convinced that they're going to do. But starting with Manchester City's team news, I'm going to go with Ederson in goal. Kyle Walker as part of a back three with Ruben Diaz in the middle and Nathan Ake as the third left-sided centre-back. In front of them, it's going to be Rodri, almost definitely, barring any horrific injuries that might happen before the game. John Stones played the game against Copenhagen, which got me concerned for who would play in the Chelsea game. He did play Manuel Akanji at Stamford Bridge in the middle of the park. John Stones was injured at the time, mind you, but I would prefer to see John Stones in midfield. But just for the sake of minutes, for the sake of fitness and energy levels, I think it might be Manuel Akanji, who's pushing into midfield. Probably more like this, in truth, with Rodri and Akanji in the middle of the park. Solid, but are you going to get that, that quality on the ball that John Stones provides in midfield, pushing in and out of centre-back, the half-back role? Then in front of Rodri and Manuel Akanji, I'm going to go Kevin De Bruyne and surprise you a little bit with what I'm planning, excuse me, Manchester City's game plan to be. I'm going to go with Bernardo Silva in the middle. And then I'm going to swap them round, actually. And then on the left, I'm going to go with Jeremy Doku, who I believe will be playing on the left with Jack Grealish being injured. And then Phil Foden on the right. And Erling Haaland up top. And we'll see. A lot of you have been commenting on my videos before actually watching the video. So let me explain what I'm about to do before you start commenting. Phil Foden on the right. Phil Foden on the right. What are you doing? We'll see. Chelsea. I think Robert Sanchez is probably going to make it. That's the rumours, at least. I think Robert Sanchez will go in goal. They are struggling at the back, like I've mentioned, but Gusto is reported to be okay. So I can imagine him coming straight in at right back for Chelsea. 2 centre-backs, with Thiago Silva being out, will be Disasi and Levi Colwill, which is a solid partnership in truth. Even without Thiago Silva, I think there's still some solidity in that Chelsea defence. And Ben Chilwell, who is someone who picks up an injury, frequently injured Ben Chilwell, but on his day, he's so lethal. Set pieces, his ability to get forward and create. He's a fantastic left-back, he really is, and I'm hoping he doesn't play, but I have a bad feeling that he will, which is unfortunate. In front of them, Caicedo and Enzo Fernandez. Put Enzo Fernandez in there first, and then Moises Caicedo in front of the back four. Now it starts to get interesting as to what Chelsea's game plan is going to be and how to nullify Manchester City's build-up play. Hinges on this one player. Totally hinges on the impact of Conor Gallagher, who was a vital component to stopping Manchester City's build-up play at Stamford Bridge. And I think he'll do the same. We've seen him do it in a Chelsea shirt. We've seen him do it in a Crystal Palace shirt as well. He gives Rodri nightmares. This player is one player that I don't rate that highly, but he's such a bulldog. He's such a terrier. You know, he's so horrible to play against, tenacious, relentless. He never stops running and he gets in the face of every single Manchester City player, in particular Rodri. And that will be the game plan for Chelsea. Now, alongside them, Raheem Sterling, who's not been playing for Chelsea recently, he's been on the bench for the last couple of games, but I have a feeling he'll start him just because they'll know. Pochettino will know this kid he's not a kid anymore, is he? But this guy will have a point to prove against Manchester City. And I can imagine him starting on the left with Cole Palmer likely to start out wide. And then Christopher Nkunku, who is someone who quite likes the Etihad. Those of you who remember the RB Leipzig game, scored a bloody hat-trick for RB Leipzig in a Champions League game a couple of seasons ago. So that's worrying. I imagine he might start. He's pacey, someone who's decent in the press. Alongside Conor Gallagher, that could be a problem. Now, game plan. This is what I feel Chelsea will do. Let's put players into their positions. Jeremy Doku and Phil Foden pushing up. And Bernardo Silva, Kevin De Bruyne, Rodri, Emmanuel Akanji. So the build-up play for Manchester City will start to look like this, with Conor Gallagher and Nkunku pushing forward, Caicedo and Fernandez, and pushing in front of Kevin De Bruyne and Bernardo Silva, Raheem Sterling and Cole Palmer getting close and into the face of Nathan Ake. And already you can see the shape that is going to cause Manchester City problems. I think they will allow Ruben Dias to have the ball. They allowed him to have the ball at Stamford Bridge, and I think they will do the same again. The issue isn't just the fact that they go man for man, it's the channels that they block. It's the channels into Rodri, with the passes from Ruben Dias going into Rodri, a block by Conor Gallagher, and their ability. And last time against Stamford Bridge, it was actually Nicholas Jackson who was blocking the runs in that little through ball from Ruben Dias, whether it into Manuel Akanji or from Ruben Dias into Rodri. And obviously Nathan Ake is being pressed by Cole Palmer and Kyle Walker being pressed by Raheem Sterling. So we're blocked in our way for build-up play. Now, what Manchester City did in the second half against Chelsea is Pep realised that we need to add an extra man. We need to pull someone deep. Now, Conor Gallagher and Nkunku spent all afternoon blocking those channels. Now, what we did against Chelsea, and why I think Phil Foden will start on the right and Bernardo Silva in the middle, was Bernardo Silva in that second half started to drop deep, coming and getting that ball, and he was often being a man, and then Conor Gallagher was torn. He was, do I block Bernardo Silva's channel, or do I want to block Rodri's channel? We had options all of a sudden. Now, Fernandez or Caicedo, whichever it may be, then has the choice to make. Do you want to push? Do you want to go up alongside Bernardo Silva and protect him, and go man for man that way? And in which case, that brings in Phil Foden, who suddenly is now playing a little bit more centrally, filling those pockets, and then all of a sudden, whether we do play that ball, if you want to man-mark Bernardo Silva out of the game, you've got a big pocket of space, if he can be found. So it's Ruben Dias needs to have his passing boots on for this game, And if he can be found, Phil Foden's in acres of space, and then you could have Chilwell having to either mark Phil Foden and tucking inside, which gives Kyle Walker the ability to push forward. So the knock-on effect of Bernardo Silva dropping deep could be huge in this game, and why I think he'll play a little bit more centrally. And on paper, we'll probably see Phil Foden on the right, but eventually tucking inside to fill those pockets and getting in alongside Kevin De Bruyne and setting the trap that Bernardo Silva can do by dropping deep and collecting that ball. That's my prediction for the game plan. My prediction for the actual scoreline is I'm gonna go for a decent game. I think it'll be a 3-1, 2-1 for the majority of the game, and eventually we'll get a late goal and kill the game for good and get ourselves back close to Liverpool, who I'm predicting will win, as well as overtaking Arsenal, who will likely win against Burnley. But what are your predictions? What are you assuming will happen for this game? What's your game plan? What's your predicted starting 11? Get in the comments below. I want to hear your thoughts. Like and subscribe to Typical City, and I'll see you in the next one.
This is Typical City.